Avarkan Creed, when we ruled the world. Birmingham, Alabama, ain't Birmingham, black country, in England. James Baldwin, the African-American writer, said, "If I love you, I have to make you conscious of the things you don't see." 2 words to explain all that follows: continuum and contiguity. History, as we know it, as a whole and in antiquity, is a continuum of the same group of people to assert their creed with nomen or cognomen like Afar, African, Avarkan, Afer, Ben Afer, Afraka, Afran, Ophir, Ophren, Epher, Epher, Epha, Ephra, Ephron, Ephraim, Ephrem, Euphrates, Africanus, Afranius, Afranius, Africoush, contiguously, competing against each other. Acknowledging this, you resolve Egyptian historical synchronism in antiquity with the Greek, Cretan, and Roman civilizations, and in the Near East with Assyrians, Persia, Phoenicia, Canaan, Mesopotamia, Syria, Palestine, and Israel. With this information, you resolve the Dark Ages and the exegesis locations issues. You understand the meaning of Birmingham, Alabama ain't Birmingham, black country, in England. Why does the exegesis not match, archaeologically, geologically, and chronologically, the conventional Egyptian timeline? First, I want to reconcile people of African descent with their continent name Africa and their African eponym. The African continent does not designate a Caucasian Roman general who conquered Carthage, North Africa, and Tunisia by defeating Hannibal Barca, a black African foe. Yes, Lupus Scipio Cornelius Africanus, cognomen Africanus, was not his victory token name as we believed. Africanus nomen, along with Afer, Afranius, and Afranius, was a creed name, a cognomen, shared by Phoenician Carthaginians and Romans. Josephus Flavius, an Ephraimite, the 1st century Jewish Roman historian, reported in the Antiquity of the Jews, Book 1. From Creation to Isaac, Chapter 15. Abraham and Keturah that Moses, an Ephraimite, children of Israel legislator, said that Africa was named after the Ophren, Afar people who conquered Africa and Arabia Felix. Moses lived in -1,600 years before Scipio Africanus. Carthage was built around -1200 BC, early Iron Age, by Aeneas, nicknamed after the destruction of Troy-Ugarit, Obak, and Djibouti, as revenge by Pharaoh Ramses III, Afraka Creed, for the attack on Egypt around -1200 BC, Phoenicians, and the Perset, Elamites, Mede, Persians. It is believed that the semi-legend Aeneas, nicknamed crossed from Carthage, Tunisia, to Rome, Italy, and built a settlement. Therefore, it is not surprising that the people of Carthage and Rome, who are kindred, will carry the same cognomen. Africans can rewrite history if we are bold enough to look at it differently than Europeans. Remember, Cheikh Anta Diop and other African scholars did not get their sources from European books to conclude that Kemet Egypt was an African civilization. They have done their research. I have done mine. I know I will challenge the cognitive dissonance of many folks. Herodotus, the father of history? The history of the Neo-Assyrian and Neo-Babylonian Empire is almost non-existent in the histories of Herodotus, the father of history. Considering the close contacts between Greeks and the Near East and the far-reaching relations of Assyria and Babylonia into Anatolia in the early Iron Age -1200 to -750 BC. No documents existed or survived in Greece, Crete, the Aegean world, or even Asia Minor, and Anatolia, Turkey, between -1200 and -750 BC. Ekrem Kurgul, the prominent Turkish archaeologist who surveyed a large part of Asia Minor, said, "The area contains no relics of art or industry, no remains of human culture or even habitation dating between -1200 to -750 BC, early Iron Age, for a total span of 450 years. It follows that any relics of culture between -1200 and -750 BC in Central Asia Minor are lost for us beyond retrieving no trace of Phrygians in Central Anatolia. No Hittite empires left traces in southern Anatolia. What happened to the Tel Amarna tablet civilization's correspondences between Egypt pharaohs and the Near East kings? We conclude, Birmingham, Alabama, ain't Birmingham, Black Country, England. The story moved from Africa to the presumed locations after -600 BC through conquests, first of Egypt occupations by the Assyrians, Ophren, Esarhaddon and Assurbanipal, then Cambyses to Persia, Apharnabus, Mede, Greeks, Iphicrates, and Macedonian Alexander the Great, Ephori, with Octavian, Augustus by Rome, Afer, Africanus, Afranius. The Near East of antiquity, Sumeria, Mesopotamia, Canaan, and Palestine, were not in the Near East, as we assumed. It was in Africa, in what Genesis calls the Garden of Eden. Only with the Elamites, the Mede, Apharnabus Persians, Egypt's conquest under Cambyses, and the Apharnabus Persian king did civilization move from Africa to the Near East. Darius' son Xerxes reigned and stretched over 127 provinces from Ethiopia to India. The Persians Achaemenid, Elamites, and the Mede were Ethiopians Afar, Apharnabus, therefore, Africans. Thus, the conquest happened outward, from Africa, towards Egypt, the Near East to India, and then Europe by Phoenician Africanus Creed. Thanks to the Afar Creed, no foreign power has ever conquered Ethiopia. Besides, the period of intense political, diplomatic, and conflict in what they called the Near East was the Iron Age from -1200 to -600 BC. No archaeological artifacts or Greek alphabets relating to Iron Age were found in Greece, Crete, Asia Minor, Turkey, Mesopotamia, or Palestine, in the Near East. Continuum and contiguity of the Afar Creed. According to the accepted chronology, Egypt, Assyria, Persia, Phoenicia, Greece, Rome, lived at different times and locations the Near East and Europe. Pharaoh Ramses III, buildings tell a different story. In Ramses III, 20th dynasty, Iron Age -1200 BC, and his palace, the temple in Tel Yehudia, Mound of the Jew, and Cantor Necropolis, and Medin at Habu, near Cairo, found on tiles and discs on one side of modern Greek's alphabets from Plato era, -423 BC to -347 BC, and Cretan jar. On the other side of the tiles was modern Persian art. In the necropolis, they found Roman burial sepulchre. According to the conventional chronology, the Persians subdued Egypt in -527 BC under Cambyses. However, there is a Persian connection with Egypt's 20th dynasty under Ramses III -1200 BC, more than 600 years earlier than thought. Greek rule was established in -332 BC under Alexander the Great, Ephori, Egypt's conquest. According to Herodotus, the Greeks, Iphicrates, settled there in the days of Psamtik in the 7th century. Herodotus visited Egypt 200 years later, in the 5th century. The conventional time of the Greek conquest of Egypt was, under Alexander the Great, Ephori, -332 BC when he ended Egypt's Persian domination. Ramses III -1200 before the present era, some 800 years earlier than the conventional timeline. The Greek alphabet. It is thought that the Greek alphabet derived from the Phoenician, Africanus, Afer, Afranius, Canaan, Ephron, and Hebrew, Ephraimite, alphabet around -1050 BC, a probable ancestor of the Greek, Iphicrates, alphabet from which Latin will derive later with Rome, Africanus, Afranius, Afer. The Greek alphabet proper is believed to have emerged with Homer's poetry at the time of the Iliad and Odysseus around -800 BC. What is more puzzling, from Ramses III -1200 BC Greek letters are from Plato's era, -427 to -347 BC, more than 800 years earlier than believed. According to Sir Flinders Petrie, Greek letters had a pre-existence in Egypt. This presupposes that Egyptians, who used hieroglyphics, also had an alphabetic system which they used only on rare occasions, mainly by the Egyptian priest class. The Roman burial in the Ramses III epic is even more disturbing. Rome occupied Egypt in -30 BC. They ruled Egypt for 600 years, until 641 AD, the Muslim conquest, Ophren, Ophir Creed. The Muslims, Arabs, and Ottomans later, Ophren, Afar, Ophir, that conquered Egypt, Afraka, Persia, Apharnabus, Faris, and Byzantine Rome, Africanus, Afranius, Afrinius, Afer, were also from the identical Afar, African Creed. Most of the coffins were painted. The painting was very coarse, as we find on mummies of Greek and Roman times. At Tel El Yahudiya, Neville and Griffith found the necropolis, the ancient cemetery of the site. They found bronze saucers, small pots with a double handle at the top, and some good specimens of Cypriot pilgrim bottles. In the child's tomb, they found a small Cypriot vase. These are depicted on Ramses III temple murals. In the tomb of Ramses III, more than 300 miles away, in Thebes, in the Valley of the Kings, very similar amphorae, jars with two handles and a narrow neck, were painted on murals. Africa is the exegesis' real location. Ezion Geber. In Ophir, the first land that Moses and the children of Israel reached after crossing the Red Sea from Yemen is Khor Amhar, in Afar, Ophir, in Djibouti. Ugarit, Troy is Obak, in Djibouti. The crossing, Exodus, happened from Ophir, in Yemen, to the present-day Djibouti Afar, Ophir, land. The pharaoh of oppression was a Homrite Ophir pharaoh in Arabia, Felix, Mitzrayim. This Homrite pharaoh's metropolis was called Afar, Avaris, like the Hyksos capital in the delta's Kemet. The king was called Apharion, reference John Gill's exposition of the Bible, Genesis 25 verse 4. Ptolemy also speaks of people called Taporites near the Homrite in Yemen. Just a reminder, Afar, Epha, Ephron, Canaanite, Afra, Ophir, Ophren, Ephra, Ephraim, Hebrew, Ephrem, Amharic, Africanus, Afranius, Afer, Roman and Phoenician, Carthaginians, Afraka, Kemet, Avarkan, Avaris, Hyksos, Afran, Oromo, Ephori, Sparta, Iphicrates, Greeks, Pharnabus, Mede, Manda, Persia, relate to the same people. We find all the exegesis locations in Afar as per Genesis 2 verses 10 to 14 is logical. How, who, and why were the exegeses moved to their current location called Near East? Frenchman Champollion the Young deciphered hieroglyphs in 1829. He discovered from the Egyptian records that the actual Near East event's location was in the Afraka Kemet, land of the gods and the ancestors, Punt and Ethiopia, Djibouti, Eritrea, and Somalia. France, in 1862, occupied Djibouti. At their arrival, Djibouti was a whole Afar land. They called it French Somaliland, the start of the 1884 Berlin Conference. Cancel culture against the Afar people. Berlin Conference partitioned Afar into three entities. Djibouti, ruled by France, Eritrea by Italy, and Ethiopia, placed under the Negus. France built the Djibouti-Ethiopia Railway to shift archaeological findings to Syria after the French took control of modern-day Syria and Lebanon in 1920. 1928 France found in Ras Shamra, Ugarit, Troy, Obak. France also found King Misha of Moab Stela in 1868, 6 years after France colonized Djibouti in 1862. On the tablet, King Misha of Moab said that he was the king of the Dibni, Afar in Djibouti. The simple way to settle the artifact's origin is the chemical analysis of objects, the clays, stela, before -600 BC. Why? They moved the exegesis location? The simple answer is to appropriate the antiquity legacy for the so-called Semites and Caucasians.